to the next in our series of challenge interviews. I'm Angela Owen, founder of Women in Defence UK, and I'm here with Major General Tom Bewick OBE, General Officer Commanding Army Recruiting and Initial Training Command. Today we're going to be focusing on the recruitment side of his command, although we may stray into initial training as part of the discussion.
Yep.
So Tom, you're a Devonian, studied and practiced naval architecture in industry before commissioning into the light infantry. Since joining Sandhurst in 1996, you've served or had tours in Germany, Cyprus, Scotland, Sierra Leone, as well as multiple deployments on Herrick and Tellick. You've commanded 7th Infantry Brigade, the famous Desert Rats.
That's right, yeah.
At staff, you've worked at PGHQ, have been MA to ACGS, worked in Finmill Cap.
Yeah.
You've attended ICSC, the Advanced Command and Staff College, the Higher Command and Staff College, and RCDS.
Full suite.
You have packed one hell of a lot into 27 years.
That's it, yeah.
High-profile jobs as well. Thank you so much for being with us. We are absolutely delighted that you're here with us today.
Thank you very, very much for having me, and you've been very kind.
It's all there, it's all yours. But before we get started, I would like to thank our Pankhurst Challenge partners, Newton Europe, for sponsoring the Challenge series, and also Clarion for allowing us to broadcast this interview at this fantastic event that is DSEi. So, GOC, Army Recruitment and Initial Training Command. Can you explain the scope of the role, what's included and what isn't?
Yes, so the Army loves an acronym. It's a bit of a mouthful. Fundamentally, it is the civilian to soldier pipeline. So I'm responsible for all recruiting, so that's regular and reserve, soldier and officer, and then basic training for all soldiers, regular and reserve. And the bit that I don't do, if you like, is Sandhurst,
right,
which is the officer, in my parlance, basic training, the commissioning course for both regular and reserve officers.
Okay.
So otherwise, it's the whole pipeline minus Sandhurst, which I hand off to my very good friend Zach Stenning to commission our officers.
Did you ask for the role? I mean, it could, with recruitment, it could be seen as a tiny bit of a poison chalice.
It's a role actually that I really enjoy. I've got an engineering background, and having so there's a bunch of numbers involved. I've got targets. It's easy to judge how progress is being made.
Yeah.
So there's a big commercial chunk of it, which actually fits very neatly with my role as I was Army Head Strat, a lot of workforce in that, and my time at FMC, understanding the costs of a lot of all of this. So actually, while not an entirely natural progression, it's a job that I jumped at. And you're right, a lot of my contemporaries will take the mick, but they don't know what they don't know.
Okay. So to kick off properly, I'd like to discuss the 2023 Defence Command paper.
Yep.
Which put people front and centre.
Yep.
Delighted to see that. We and I, in fact, were asked to submit our thoughts prior to drafting. And I'm going to read you a bit of it.
Yep.
It says, defence is already an environment where talent thrives and where careers are nurtured, and we will make sure this remains the case. Diverse teams are stronger, more innovative and less prone to groupthink. To ensure we recruit and retain people with the skills we need, we will champion inclusion across the organisation's breadth and depth. We will continue to diversify our workforce, including through increased recruitment of women and ethnic minorities. So Army recruitment stats, they went up, they've come down a bit, they haven't been great.
Yep.
So what are the Army's plans to meet the challenge of increased recruitment of women?
So, thank you. The 30 by 30 level of ambition, 20 by 30 in Army speak, and there's been a lot of discussion about how much the Army is really engaged. As the man that runs recruiting, we're really engaged.
Okay.
And a huge amount of work in order to really reset our image with the broader population. So, at the front end, if you like, we're actually doing, I dare say, I'd say it carefully, but we're doing a relatively decent job. So well over 20% of our registrations for people joining the army are female. And actually, when it comes to applications, about 20%, 1 in 5 of all of our applications are women.
Yep.
At the back end, once we get all of our recruits into basic training, that's officers, soldiers, regular or reserve, then the pass rates through both basic training and Sandhurst are the same. There's no gender sort of imbalance, if you like. And actually, when we come to serving soldiers and serving officers, on the soldier side, certainly, we retain women longer. The average amount of time a woman stays in the army is longer than that of a man, and they promote faster. Mm-hmm. So at the front end, on our attract, a lot, you'll notice that the latest campaign that we've just launched, and I'll be beating myself up if I don't really get, you belong here.
Yep.
A big launch on the 4th of September, going great guns, really good. But a lot of that, the focus group work that went into that campaign is really broadening our image to all sections of society, ethnic minority and female. And the you belong here is something that all the work suggests resonates very strongly with women. So it's not about assertiveness or aggression or a lot of the things that people associate with military service in the army. It's a belonging campaign, and that does work. And I say, the inflow, the application's really, really strong. But the bit where all of our effort is now focused is on the conversion of those great number of applications, over 20%, into basic training starts. And what we've come across, and it's in common with many other militaries and actually parts of industry that are trying to broaden their sort of diversity, gender diversity, is that some really deep-seated characteristics that mean women broadly really have to be convinced that they will fit in, convinced that they will really belong. And so what that materializes is that for men, our conversion is much easier. For women, it is more difficult. So it takes more applications to get a female to the start of basic training. Not lost on anybody. A huge amount of work going into this. So there is the broader technology getting that right that applies to everybody. But what we're really into is two things on the female front. Firstly, medical, and secondly, the nurture, the how we find people's fit. That's the expression we're using, how you find the fit, and how you make sure that all candidates, women especially, have all of the information they could possibly want in order to reassure themselves, essentially, that they are joining an organisation where they're going to fit in. Because a lot of the social pressures, if a young man says, I'm going to join the army, then it's a good on you, well done. A young woman says, I'm going to join the army, it's ooh, that's a brave decision. That the natural societal norms are still working slightly against us. And I understand it, we have to roll with it, but a lot of that means that women need more commitment. So the key point is, we're doing well on attract, we're doing well in serving, we're doing well through basic training, comparatively. It's getting the convincing, that conversion from application to start of basic training, which is the focus of so much of our work.
So that's really, really interesting. We ran a summit in July called Changing the Face of Defence. How do you attract more women into the sector? And the key takeaway, the key piece of insight was the need to explicitly, unmistakably target and invite women, and to keep them interested.
If I were to, it's for, and this is I'm always nervous as a man explaining, but you've got to really say you are wanted.
Absolutely.
It isn't, there is a job here that you could do.
Yep.
It is, we want you.
Yes.
And that is the conversion challenge. Because, again, in my broader from this conversation, you'll be aware that across just about every Western military in the world, there's a recruiting challenge at the moment. So I've got a numbers pressure, but we've also got the shape pressure. And we're into shape here. How we get the best of the talent that the nation has to offer. 50% of that talent is women.
Yeah.
We need more of it. You know, there is a really good, strong operation. We need more of it. So how, and all the work is, how do we get the message across that you are wanted? Not that just that you'll fit in, that there's a place for you. You are wanted. Hence, you belong here. Yeah.
So MI5
Yes.
were at our summit.
Yep.
And they've managed to get the recruitment stats up to 50% female.
Yep.
And they've done it really well by using positive action interventions at this stage.
Yes.
And the things that they do are to, have regular call-ups with them.
Yeah.
They've changed the offer as well, so the offer is more attractive. They've also, and I suspect you do this anyway, they recruit for aptitude.
Yep.
And then train the skills in afterwards.
Yes.
So they are focusing really hard on this and are having, really good success with it.
Yes.
And
so if you take the part of the army that is perhaps most similar to partners across government, those parts especially, then say the intelligence corps. So there we're well above 20% female soldiers, officers.
Yeah.
If you go to a part that's perhaps most different, the infantry, you've got a much, much lower representation. And so it comes to the discussion that there are over 200 different roles in the army. Not all of them are shooting and stabbing. There are a huge, but getting that knowledge even across is really, really difficult. There are parts of the army, broadly across the medical community, where females dominate.
Yeah.
And again, you're into gender stereotyping there to a certain extent. There are parts of the army where representation's going pretty well. Royal Logistic Corps, the gunners, etc. And you then get into the women in the infantry sort of discussion as well. And I don't really have a problem with it because I don't really mind where the talent is.
Yeah.
We've got a common set of standards, and the whole idea is that the talent will flow to where the army can use it best and where people will fit in, where they're wanted, where they'll feel comfortable. Our biggest challenge is getting to that sort of 20% threshold in different bits of the army where behaviours change, attitudes change, and people start to feel wanted, feel like they've got to pay. It's the critical mass.
Yeah.
And if I go back to a conversation, my old regiment is the Rifles. We had come to we are going to be the best infantry regiment for women to serve in. We are going to make ourselves the best place to be. Women will want to come to us because we want that talent. So what we thought we would do is say, right, we would try to direct all of the women recruits and officers into a battalion in order to establish that critical mass, get the networks working, and all the rest of it. But of course, we bumped into the very cold, hard reality of the recruits coming through saying, well, I don't want to go to that battalion. Actually, I want to go to this battalion because I want that role. Or I want to go this battalion because actually that's where I want to live. All of the normal real world. And so we've ended up penny potting. We haven't got to that critical mass, desperate as we are to try and do it. And that's the same across all sorts of different regiments in the army. So places where you reach critical mass, suddenly behaviours change, people realise they're wanted, the role models are there, the environment is there, the social life is there, all sorts of things change. Getting to that critical mass is the hurdle.
So you talked about the challenges actually sort of keeping women between, them applying and then getting into the basic training.
Yeah.
What new things are you doing?
So, lots and lots of work on female nurture teams.
Right.
Essentially.
Tell me more about that.
So when we have a female candidate, we recognise that they need more persuasion to actually turn that interest, I want to be, or I've got an interest in being a soldier, even as much as I've applied to be a soldier, and then taking the extra time in order to find out, A, where their interests might lie, and to persuade them that, no, we really want you here. No, we will find your fit. There will be a place in the army where you will really like the job, like the environment, etc. And to dispel, quite frankly, some of the social messages out there in the wider world about serving in, female serving in the army. So there's that. And then you've got all of the other barriers to entry that apply for everybody, but for the female candidates especially, physical aptitude is a big chunk of that. And so working with a company called Be Military Fit in order to enable all candidates, but women especially, to get themselves to a point where they're confident that they will pass. This is another, my operational psychologist team are all over me on this. They're broadly speaking, males will say, men will say, good enough, I can probably do that.
Yeah.
Whereas essentially, we need to get to the point where at home, in their own time, they've done the test, they passed it, and so therefore they know that they can do it. And for all of what we say, it's really what we do, what they see us do, how we communicate, that is going to bridge that gap between the number of applications that we get, the interest that is quite obviously and patently there, and then getting to the start of the basic. Because I say, once they're in basic training, pass rates are exactly the same as for men and for women. And when we get them through that, especially on the soldier side, it's a better story again. We in many ways, for me and for the team, having the focus area of knowing it's all about conversion is it's a problem that we can solve. We can get after this. Now, all great, but of course there's the numbers pressure as well. And while I'm still under the pump for not recruiting enough soldiers into the army full stop, then there is clearly a limit to how much all of that is going to play out in that narrative. There is a volume question, and then there is the shape, the diversity question. And the diversity is easily as much on the ethnic minority side as it is on the female side.
You really care about this, don't you?
I do, yes. I've got 3 daughters.
And they sometimes go in the office?
Quite frequently go in the office, yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Can we move on?
Yes,
Another
of course.
part of the Defence Command paper talks about lateral entry.
Yes.
Does that fall under your remit?
Not lateral entry, but rejoiners does, if you see what I mean. So, at the moment, we do very little advertising for you have served, you've gone and done something else, do you want to come back? And this is actually an element where we've had, for those in the know will know, an AEDP team, but an internal consultancy piece of work to go into, right, how can we far better capture this audience? Because broadly speaking, soldiers that have already been trained to come back in is a more efficient, but also to get all of that experience and know-how back into the army. And there's, again, once you scratch the surface, there's actually a lot of demand out there.
Yeah.
So while lateral entry is not, I'm at the start of the pipeline, rejoiners is. And the message, out there is that if you are wishing to get back into the army, and quite frankly, people who've been in the army know a lot more about it. The issue is that I've left one part of the army and actually want to go and join another part of the army. So it can get a bit complicated, but we're on it. We are vastly simplifying the process. We're actually going to advertise for it rather than just accept who comes along.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah, and
how are you getting the message out?
So social media, predominantly. So all is a dangerous thing, but a very significant number, majority of former servicemen and women are parts of social networks with former colleagues, etc. Those forums exist. And so getting the word out that if you have served, for whatever reason that you left, if you want to come back either to the same bit of the army or a different part of the army, we are ready for that conversation. That's definitely my part of the world.
So how do you assess how skills have increased? And I just want to ask the full question.
Yeah.
While people have been out, I've got a particular interest in women who've been on maternity leave who get no credence for the value of the increase in sort of skills that they've had as a mother.
Yep.
And I'm going to say things like negotiation skills, whether it's a toddler or a teenager,
Yep.
resilience, being able to function when the
Tired.
baby's had you up all
Yes.
night, planning and
Yep.
preparation, trying to get 2 kids out of the door with the right kit at the right time in the morning.
Yep.
How are you going to allow for those type of skills when people come back in?
So you're right. So this is all about, again, the finding your fit conversation. The army being way more flexible in how it looks at people. So if you left as a gunner, as a corporal, or you left as a engineer, as a captain, and you've done one, and you've gone through a phase in your life, and it might be childcare, do you know what, or it might be you've
Could be
done
sabbatical.
X in industry,
Yeah.
or lots of different things.
Yeah.
Then how do we get you back and take into account? So the likelihood is that you'll come back in at the same rank. So because that's my, but the place that all of those people know an awful lot more about the army than they did when they joined. The likelihood is that they will have a much better idea about where they want to serve and the progression that they would wish to see. So what I don't have control of, because I'm not DSEi, is the lateral entry question. You left as a captain, you can come back as a lieutenant colonel because you've done X, Y, and Z. Not my bag. I can easily see where that conversation might be going. For the bit that I do have control of, it's about how I can be much more flexible about where people rejoin.
Okay.
So I don't have the rank, but I do have the, working with APC, the Army Personnel Centre, working with the DSEi team, to really, again, we can find their fit, to use the language of recruiting.
Okay. Light division, riflemen,
Yes,
gendered ranks.
yes.
Do you think that affects recruitment for women? There is, I would posit that it's fundamentally wrong that a woman or non-binary member of the army has to be called a man to be part of the team.
A wider discussion, yes. So you've got guardsmen, you've got riflemen,
craftsmen,
et cetera, et
yeah.
cetera. So I'm not going to preempt CGS or DCGS on all of this. All I will say is that is a very live discussion. There are arguments for and against. There are advocates, male and female, for and against. And whatever the result is, we will get on and do. Embrace and move on.
Well,
quite frankly, if I can take my regimental hat off
Yeah.
and put my recruiting and basic training hat on,
Yes.
I'm clearly in favour of moving away any barriers, perceived or otherwise, to service. That has to be weighed against all of the other historical, cultural, et cetera, norms that we've established as part of a regimental system, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm not going to try and buck tradition. But
you can see how, in me, that tension
you're
exists.
conflicted.
Yes.
And you've got 3 daughters.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about parental leave then for 3 daughters. So at the moment, the armed forces, and I'm interested in whether you think this affects recruitment, maternity leave, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably an attract.
Yeah.
Paternity leave, statutory minimum. So, the armed forces are behind, arguably, what's happening in the rest of the world, in the rest of the UK, where paternity leave is being increased. And I'll give you some examples. John Lewis, all new parents get 26 weeks paid leave, 14 weeks at full pay and 12 at half pay. Aviva, equalised maternity, adoption, surrogacy, paternity years ago.
Yeah.
And Sweden is known for being really good. So at the moment, still, armed forces, 2 weeks paternity, which is statutory minimum, maternity, fantastic. Reinforces the fact that childcare is a woman's responsibility. I'm not sure you'd agree with that either.
I wouldn't agree with that, and neither would my wife. So all of that all sits with somebody with DSEi.
I know.
So I can have a view. What I can do, does it have an effect on recruiting?
Recruitment.
So I'd probably say, if we're talking about the broad gender stereotyping, then it might have an effect. but the vast majority of the people I recruit are young. And if they have thought about children, then it's probably not really part of their career choice decision. That said, in the Army Reserve, we recruit all the way up to 48 years old. So it's not an irrelevant consideration. All I'll say is that, again, where we're talking about recruiting women, anything that reinforces the fact that the military are not wholly have moved beyond gender sort of stereotyping roles is probably unhelpful. But those are big policy decisions that sit well outside my sort of purview. I can, yeah.
Okay, I think that's a fair answer.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 years left in post?
2 years, yeah. Presuming I don't get sacked in the meantime. Always a possibility.
Where do you hope recruitment to be by the time you finish?
That's actually quite an easy one, and thank you for it. I want recruitment to not be on CGS's worry list.
What will have to happen?
So the things that will have to happen was that we'll have to start getting the volume right, the numbers, and we'll have to get the shape right. And part of shape is diversity. Within shape, you also go into the skills agenda. Digital, engineering, especially some of our pinch point trades. But we've got a numbers discussion, and broadly speaking, I need to get those in the right place. And then we've got a shape discussion, and that is about diversity, inclusion, especially on the female side, especially on the ethnic minority side. And then we've got the skills based within that, especially engineering, especially digital.
Have you got any targets?
I have targets for all of that.
But you're not going to share them?
Well, I mean, broadly, it isn't. We recruit about 13,500 people a year. Yeah. In order to get the right number out to the back end of the training system. So that's the volume discussion. I'm well aware that we're on to, I need to get the recruiting inflow for females above 20%. And like I say, that's the goal by 2030 for the Army. Like I say, I'm there at the very front end of that, and we're working super hard, and we know we've got a route to getting to that target, which is all about taking that interest and making sure women who have applied, who are interested, really feel that they are wanted in the Army. And the message is, we do, you are wanted, there is a place for you, you belong here.
So just before you finish,
yes,
can you come back and tell us how you've done?
I would be very happy to.
That would be really good.
Yes.
I'm going to have to finish there.
Yes, of course.
I just want to say thank you to Newton Europe and to Clarion again for making this possible, and to you. And good luck with your keynote speech.
Yes.
Which, the British Army approach to the recruiting challenge. Where's it on? When? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon?
Yes. Oh, wrong. Sorry, it's Friday. It's part of the International Recruiting Conference.
Friday.
Yes, which is actually another great opportunity to share experiences across many of our allies who are in a very similar boat in recruiting, both in terms of the numbers overall and the diversity. So I very much hope that Friday afternoon, especially, is a cathartic moment where we can share some best practice and steal some ideas from each other.
I'm just sorry I won't be here to hear it, but thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you very much, Angela, for having me.
Thank you.